This is kind of a reply to Dewinthemorning's video, defend natural selection, and but I think it's a bit more general than that, in that quite a lot of your videos on biology are obviously kind of directed towards Inmendham, and although, you know, the your videos back and forth with him are often kind of nasty, both ways. Forgetting all of that, I still do think, I kind of think you're not really understanding his take on biology, and I think that you're not really arguing against his take on biology. You're really arguing against really your visceral dislike of what it, or how he sees, you know, it, how he sees it, you know, how he sees that the natural selection game implies, and, you know, what to do with it, what kind of ideology we should have in the face of that knowledge, rather than the biology itself, because I can't really see much wrong with his position. The picture he paints of biology. That's all, you know. I mean, there's minor things wrong with that, which occasionally I've picked him up on, but I can't really say that they're particularly fundamental to, you know, discrediting his view of biology. His view of biology is pretty much very similar to my own, and so although, you know, you've, well, from what I gather from your videos, you've made efforts to understand evolutionary biology and the selfish gene theory and all that, which I don't think Inmendham's stuff is at all at odds with, and yet you continually try to pick holes in his outlook of biology on biological terms, and I think I know why you're doing that. As I say, I think it's because you don't like the idea of the as what you might see as the consequences of of that outlook, and, you know, perhaps, you know, if I'm honest, I don't like that that idea either, but I can't pretend that there's anything fundamental really with his as I say, his biological outlook, and I mean, it's kind of an odd, it's difficult communicating like this, because difficult to communicate via video, because it's quite, well, it's a lot of effort for me. I'm sure it's a lot of effort for other people. So yeah, what I mean is, if you agree with somebody 99% of the time, things, whatever, you're not going to bother to do a video or perhaps even comment on the 99% of the stuff that you actually agree with. You're just going to pick on the 1% that you disagree with. Not necessarily to put the other person down, but just to, it'd be a waste of time just to be a yes man. And so, you want to discuss the bits that there isn't agreement on, I suppose. But I don't see any real disagreement on the biology front, and I mean, we can argue. I mean, you have argued. You've said that you don't like his metaphors, and that's fine. I mean, I don't like some metaphors that are used either. But it's but that's not really saying very much. I mean, if a metaphor doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. It's not really. They're not meant to be cast iron. They're just meant to be vehicles for communication, and so maybe I don't like the gladiator war metaphor either, but I can understand what he's getting at and what it conveys, and that it's perfectly valid. You could think of situations where at a particular level, at the level of the individual or the gene or whatever, that the metaphor might not work. I don't know. You could find, with all metaphor, all metaphors break down at some point, and so you can find information that's not going to be conveyed very well by the metaphor. But who cares? I mean, if I suppose I mean, if you're going to argue that the metaphor is giving an invalid impression of what's going on, or deliberately so, or whatever, then I guess you might have a point. But so anyway, this can you defend natural selection thing? I mean, but there clearly are people that do, or it can, from the things that they say, it implies that they have some validation, that there's some validation of the process. And people will talk about things, people die, there's some disease epidemic, and they'll say, well, it's entirely natural, as if that means anything, or should have any import into it. Or they talk about ecological balance when, or something like that, sort of Gaia hippie types. Hippie types. And then you've got the God people that, are not necessarily at odds with the science or whatever, where, presumably natural selection is the creator's vehicle, or, means of of the influence on the world, and has some properties of agency or whatever. And so I guess what he means that if you're of a non-anti-natalist disposition, is that I guess what he's saying is that he is obliging you to explain why natural selection is a good thing in the world. And so yeah, you're kind of saying that natural selection is just everything that's gone on and produced, over 3.5 billion years or whatever, but that's not really quite true, and well, not true at all. In that natural selection is quite a specific thing. It's the differential reproductive success of organisms based on the heritable traits that they have. So and how those interact with the environment in various ways. It's a process. It's process which leads to the state of adaptation and all the other contingencies and whatnot that happen concomitantly with that process, as important as they are, cannot explain those states of adaptation like natural selection can, and that natural selection, if you like, is in inverted commas responsible for. Not responsible in the sense that you can take natural selection to court or anything, but is obviously a necessary factor in the evolution of life and in the state of life. And the state of life is that most organisms perish, and for those that have developed complex nervous systems through the process of natural selection, a process that there is no other process known to us that is capable of building such complex things, is in that sense responsible for that state of frailty, of vulnerability, and the undeniable fact that suffering inevitably follows from the development of such complex nervous systems, and sadly that's how it is. So yeah, I don't quite understand. My feeling is that your objections to his biology is is because of the, well, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do about the situation? Rather than his presentation of what the situation is. And yeah, so I think you're being a bit unfair. I don't know what you wrote, something like he thinks that nature's maliciously brought you into being to make you suffer. I think that's just been uncharitable, and I don't think a fair representation of his, and I'd say to a very large extent my own view of life on Earth.